On July 29, 1975, Brigadier Murtala Mohammed succeeded Yakubu Gowon as Nigeria's third military head of state after the latter was overthrown in a bloodless coup. However, Mohammed would rule for just 200 days before he was assassinated in an abortive coup on February 13, 1976. As a result, General Olusegun Obasanjo, who had been his second in command, took his place and continued with his predecessor's policies. The Murtala-Obasanjo regime would create a new constitution in 1978 and a new civilian government, the Second Republic, the following year on October 1st, 1979. Murtala Mohammed's decisive leadership and the revolutionary changes in both domestic and foreign affairs won the hearts and minds of many Nigerians. On July 30, 1975, the Libyan government offered diplomatic support to the Mohammed administration, and 2 days later, on August 1st, the British did the same. On August 6, 1975, the Supreme Military Council (SMC) selected the 25 members of the Federal Executive Council. On November 18, 1975, the 50-member committee that Murtala Mohammed created to design a new constitution met for the first time. He purged those alleged to be corrupt, slothful, or ineffective from public service ministries, universities, parastatals, and other state and federal government organizations. To provide recommendations on the establishment of further states, Mohammed established a commission under the direction of Justice Ayo Irikefe. In 1976, 7 new states were founded as a result of its findings. A group headed by Justice Akintola Aguda was also established by Murtala Mohammed to decide if a new federal capital should be established due to the congestion in Lagos. As a location for a new capital, the group suggested Abuja in the southern portion of the old northern region. A significant change from the ostentation of the Gowon era, Murtala Mohammed instituted the low-profile strategy due to economic concerns. Murtala Mohammed removed state governors from the SMC membership while maintaining the basic principles of military federalism. He then established a new body, the National Council of States, in which they were a central component. This body's establishment highlighted the status of the state government as subservient, because it was presided over by the head of state and reported to the SMC. In comparison to Gowon's regime, this system allowed the head of state to have more influence over the state governors. Murtala Mohammed pursued a ferocious foreign policy that put Africa at the forefront and actively supported liberation movements on the continent. The program of transition to a civilian government that Mohammed started before his death, however, was the one that had the greatest impact on all of his activities. His successor, Obasanjo, carried out the program as intended. The stages of the transition agenda included expanding the number of states, reforming local administration, creating a new constitution, establishing political parties, and ultimately electing a new government. On October 1st, 1979, civilian rule returned, marking the completion of the transition process. On Friday, February 13, 1976, Colonel Dimka carried out an unsuccessful coup which resulted in the death of the head of state, General Murtala Mohammed. It appeared that Dimka's goal was to reinstate Gowon as the head of state by bringing him back from his self-imposed exile. However, it failed. Subsequently, Lieutenant General Olusegun Obasanjo became Nigeria's fourth head of state. Although first compared negatively to his predecessor, Obasanjo was successful where the more obstinate Murtala Mohammed had failed. The new head of state developed a skilled political leadership that was committed to preventing the country's Muslim-Christian and North-South divisions from worsening. The Obasanjo regime initiated several reforms in public life in addition to carefully managing every phase of the transition to civilian rule in October 1979. The creation of public complaints commissioners in each of the 19 states of the Federation, as well as the federal capital, served as the principal vehicle for this procedure. Even though specific instances of corruption and abuse of power were made public, there was little headway achieved in halting the growth of this disease in the society and economy. Olusegun Obasanjo expanded the Gowon-initiated Economic Indigenization Initiative. Additionally, it employed the Land Use Decree of 1978 to organize the nation's disorganized tenancy laws, lessen ruinous land speculation, and stop the ongoing disputes over private and public property rights. In a similar spirit, Operation Feed the Nation (OFN) was introduced by the Obasanjo regime to combat the sharp increase in food exports. Although none of these attempts was effective, the initiatives provided information on the kinds of tactics Nigeria would need to use to change its economic imbalances. In retrospect, it appears that the Murtala-Obasanjo regime tried to take on too much too fast, given the difficult process of the transition to civilian control and the numerous reforms that were implemented during their 4 years in office. Obasanjo imposed several austerity measures during his final year in office and ordered that all government employees maintain a low profile. Despite its oil wealth, the head of state was aware that Nigeria was still relatively underdeveloped, with the majority of its business people serving as agents or middlemen for international corporations. Such a commendable approach, however, was quickly forgotten as the successive civilian administration rode the wave of a new rise in oil prices, spent resources more quickly than they could have recovered, and left the nation with a massive debt load and an almost bankrupt economy when it abruptly came to an end on December 31st, 1983. On September 21, 1978, General Olusegun Obasanjo repealed the prohibition on political parties. The Constituent Assembly then delivered a draft constitution that same day that established Nigeria's presidential system of government and would usher in the Second Republic. It was modeled after the American presidential system. On September 22, 1978, 3 political parties were established: the Unity Party of Nigeria, UPN, the Nigerian People's Party, NPP, and the National Party of Nigeria, NPN. The NPN won 168 of the 449 House of Representatives seats when the legislature was chosen on July 14, 1979, while 111 seats in the House of Representatives were won by the UPN. On August 11, 1979, the NPN candidate Alhaji Shehu Shagari won the presidency with 34% of the vote. On October 1, 1979, he began his tenure as Nigeria's first executive president and the revised constitution became operative. Shehu Shagari's second term was brief. It lasted for just 3 months. The president was deposed by some senior officers of the Nigerian army on December 31, 1983. This military coup would lead to the fall of the Second Republic. The Second Republic of Nigeria's demise was caused by a variety of circumstances. These are a few of them. The mismanagement of public funds came first. More than anything else, the mishandling of funds by Shagari's administration led to a period of economic hardship. Although there was a global economic downturn, poor management made it worse in Nigeria. In fact, many ministers and political advisors were appointed by the federal and state governments. In addition to a large number of permanent secretaries, commissioners were also appointed in each state. In addition to this, each state had a House of Assembly that contained at least 60 lawmakers. The appointment of board and government parastatal chairs became the norm. They were chosen based less on qualifications and more on political considerations. This substantial contribution severely harmed the country's already perilous financial situation. Senators and House members in the Senate and House of Representatives had unique pay scales that made it impossible to compare them to those of other countries. Hence, their numbers in the body could not be counted. It is a common belief nowadays that Nigerian lawmakers receive the highest salaries worldwide. Legislatures spent their time deciding on their pay scales, fringe benefits, and unnecessary foreign travel rather than focusing on their official duties. They did not consider the state of the economy or the welfare of the constituents they were supposed to be representing. The politicians decided to borrow to save Nigeria from the financial crisis they had put the country in, which resulted in a significant national debt. In addition to these allegations of embezzlement, this was a time when the political class allegedly violated the Constitution willfully and disrespectfully. They did this on purpose to advance their political goals. People looked to the legislative arm of the government, which was given the authority to check and balance the executive branch of government to ensure that good governance was present. Due to their participation as active collaborators, the legislators were powerless to stop the executive's sway. They were distracted by other matters that did not advance the interest of the constituents they were tasked with serving. Also, the president was not given the authority to deport a fellow citizen under any provision of the Constitution. However, the then president deported Shugaba, the Speaker of the dissolved Borno State House of Assembly, in violation of the Constitution. This was the maximum extent to which people could abuse the opportunity that was provided to them. Shugaba was only able to return to the country through legal action after the embattled Speaker successfully contested the president's action in court. In addition to corruption and the abuse of authority, there was increase in discipline in the public sector. Inflation of government contracts in exchange for kickbacks, falsification of accounts in the public sector, malpractice in examinations in educational institutions including universities, receiving and giving of bribes, and the perversion of justice among law enforcement, the judiciary and other institutions responsible for the administration of justice. To make matters worse, the elections in September 1983 were anything but free and fair. Rigging and falsification of results were the order of the day. Thus, the signs that the Shagari administration would not last up to 1987 were gloomy. Although a majority of the senior officers in the army did not support the transfer of power to the civilians in 1979, the failure of these civilians and the grave economic and political situations Nigeria found itself in gave them the perfect opportunity to strike. On December 31, 1983, the army overthrew the civilian government of Shagari and effectively ended the Second Republic. On January 1, 1984, Major General Muhammadu Buhari made his maiden broadcast as Nigeria's new head of state. He would be the fifth military man to assume power. If the Shagari administration was a frying pan, the Buhari regime was fire. You can know more about the Muhammadu Buhari regime in our next episode.